get a, do you want the regular one?
I'm gonna get the regular.
Well, then
Just-
here it
I'm
is,
just used to,
no extra charge.
we're gonna need it tomorrow, aren't we?
You know what? There you go. You're very welcome. You know what, I've got a great tradition, and I'm gonna join you over here.
Okay.
Where's Herb? Herb is always here. No Herb today?
No, no.
You know, it may have been, this is like the first, well, this is like the first evening Shiva Minyan for Gabrielle.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll go to the morning time, Monday night, I figured I could come here and then go there and still make it, because they start davening at 7:45.
Aye, Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi Shatz.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi Shatz.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Well, they give us different tablecloths.
What?
They give us different tablecloths today.
Yeah, white.
Indeed.
They're back to the egg salad.
It's just leftover from Kiddush.
Better to do that instead of the hard-boiled eggs. I didn't see egg salad today, but,
Oh, really?
yeah,
I don't think we had it at lunch.
no, they didn't. They checked it out.
You have some wonderful sources on the third page today, the last page.
Oh, with Aviva Zornberg and
Calderon.
yeah.
Aviva Zornberg is incredible. She is. You know, she used to speak every year at UCLA Hillel when Chaim Seidler fellow was
Right.
there. And I haven't seen her name around there since. It may be there, but I don't hear about it anymore.
Got it. Don't know.
Yeah.
I waited outside when they discussed the library meeting. I waited, I didn't go into the sanctuary, I waited outside. There weren't any seats, you know, you'd have to crawl over people, you know, and I didn't want to disrupt anybody. Someone was disrupt.
This is your baby, Rabbi Shatz.
It seems to be a constant struggle, but
Good to see you.
how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Okay, hello again, good to see you.
Back again.
I'm Jody, no Irv.
Yeah.
That's unusual.
Liz on his way.
Who's on his way?
Still doesn't help.
Is that, no, that's Pete. Is Louis your partner?
No, Tom is.
Tom is. Okay, I knew it was a short name, not. I can't remember anything these days. You know,
I think
names
we're all
are just.
overwhelmed by news, et cetera, you know?
Yeah,
Just too
well,
much.
when you're dealing with Hamas
I
saying,
know.
our job, we don't want to agree to any ceasefire because we've
We
got
wanna
Israel
make
where
sure
we
more
want them.
Gazans are killed.
Yeah, because that makes Israel look bad
Right.
and that
So
puts
bad
more
or
pressure
bad
on
PR,
Israel.
we're willing to give up all these lives.
Yeah.
I mean, you're just fighting kamikazes at that point. You really are. I mean, they don't care about their own lives. We know Sinwar
That's,
will
okay,
eventually be killed.
today, okay, 8 Israelis in attack.
In an
were blo-
ambush.
They were blown up by a mine in they were
It was
blown
an
up.
ambush.
But I
They
understand
went
there was a mine.
They went to go, there was a bulldozer and that was like attacked and they went to get to it. And then they were hit.
But
They were carrying explosives.
I was told there was a mine.
Okay, well, this is what I heard just from, I guess Lou told me that, but I think that was what was on the Times of Israel.
Okay, what I was told there was a mine, but if they're planting mines and they can blow up their own, you know.
Yeah, and it's also
Right,
against the
I've
law
never
to
seen this one
do
before.
that, so.
Well, they
An
don't care
altar
about the
book
law.
you've never
you know.
seen?
I haven't heard anything like
Professor
that.
of
I was told
comparative
that there was a
literature
law.
also.
It's possible.
At Berkeley. So this one came out in 2010. Yeah.
friend of mine's on his way.
Okay. All right, well, we'll wait a few minutes to see if we get a minion. Were any of you here with Rabbi Klickfeld last week?
Excuse me?
Were any of you here with Rabbi Klickfeld last week for Sina Shishi?
I was not.
Okay, neither was I.
I don't know if anyone else was, but I don't. You here last week? I was at Ohio. You were at Ohio? You got married? What was it? What sentence was it? You okay for a sentence?
No, we go every year for Ohio Music Festival.
We almost,
Ah.
we were looking at going, but we didn't wanna be there when the festival was going on. It's too crazy to find a reasonable price.
Oh, you have to make reservations a year in advance.
Well, yeah, everything is, the prices for everything there is very high. There's just one place that's a little outside of Ohio that we found, Oak Ridge something,
Oh, yeah.
that's reasonable.
But right now, it probably was booked up solid and would have cost you
No, we
just
wouldn't
an
even.
arm instead of an
No,
arm and a
no,
leg.
Well,
Always
we
expensive.
found a place in Santa Barbara which is way worse than Ojai. It's everything there is, you start at $350. But there's this place we've stayed at that's like $129. So that looks, you know, it's just a motel. It's not bad, but it sounds like a bargain comparison.
Rashad, where did this portion of the library come from?
Which one?
The far
All the way
right?
on the end?
Yeah.
A lot of it came from Cheryl Goldman's mom
Oh, really?
when she passed away. Cheryl Goldman's mom, when Seth's mom passed away, Cheryl Goldman went through her mom's stuff and brought her stuff over also. So I think some of it is from her mom, some of it is from his mom. And then some people have just like brought stuff and put it on the shelves. This summer,
Is that okay?
I'm gonna do like
Can we
actually focus on these shelves because I haven't really yet. It was my big project. I was in here on October 6th. I was in here putting all the books together, and then the plan was that on October 8th, I was gonna send out an email that was gonna like explain which books we had and which books we still needed, and I haven't done that yet.
So can we bring stuff to add to it? or
Not
you-
yet, because I want specific stuff. Some of this stuff is gonna go away. It's supposed to be a bait midrash.
You're not gonna toss it out, right? You're not gonna toss the books out. You say it's gonna go away, where's it gonna go to?
Probably to the library.
Which library, here?
Yeah.
Okay, the one here, fine, because you're not gonna toss them away.
Oh, into the.
I don't think that I said I was gonna toss them
Into
away
this-
now.
No, when you said some of the stuff is
Yeah.
to go away, I got very curious, because I can't believe the good stuff that people put in the trash, and some of these books, people wanna read them, they really do.
Yeah, no, I never said I was gonna throw them away, but they're not gonna, they probably just won't be in here.
Have you ever seen where they're in the hallway and they're like, we're getting rid of these?
Yeah, we have a community book area on our street. People take
one of
books
those.
Yeah,
and-
yeah.
and-
My parents had that on their street too.
I think we should
Yeah.
have one here,
It's
because
You know where the
so
best
wonderful.
one
Well, that's what this is
There's
for right
one
now.
on Bedford, south here, and there's like a big, there's a
Yeah,
water
I've seen-
stuff
I've
and like a huge thing and
yeah,
it's categorized and stuff. And there's
Oh,
kid
wow.
stuff.
Yeah,
It's
I mean, the
really
I've
idea
seen
for
one
these
on
shelves
Bedford,
is that
there's a little
there'll
garage
be,
over
that'll be a
there.
bait
There's one right
midrash.
here.
So
Right.
the,
That one's
the
the best
center
one.
shelves
No, I
that
don't like the
are
one on Bedford. It's
Sejorim
like
will
that.
stay
I
the
find it
same.
different.
And then the Svarim will stay the same, but I'm gonna try to get full sets of things that we don't have full sets of. And then some of that stuff will stay, but there's some stuff on those shelves that people just gave me because they knew we were looking for books.
Yeah, I see that there's books.
But I haven't, I mean, I've organized them, but I haven't gone through to like weed stuff out. But then an email will go out to people to say like, we need this volume of this. A lot of these books came from Ziegler, and then some of them came from Marshall and Chana. But the sets of things are not all of them are complete, so.
Well, I'm
Does
not gonna
Ziegler,
have it
oh, I'm
either.
sorry.
No, go ahead.
Ziegler didn't move the
Does
books.
Ziegler have the books transferred over? Do they have a library there?
They yes, well, sort of. They have a room, the center room of the new space is their Beit Midrash, and so they have shelves around the perimeter, and all those shelves have books on them. But some of these came from the library that were additional sets. Like they didn't need multiple sets of things anymore because it wasn't a library anymore. Now it's just a Beit Midrash for the school. So there is still a library at AJU. I was just there yesterday,
Is it at
Friday.
AJU or has it gone to?
Well,
did it
he'll know
go-
actually more than I will.
Well, wait,
Yeah.
did it go to, because I had heard that they might be putting all the books to Brandeis Bardine in the house.
So
of-
some, again, Michael will know better than I will.
Is that right?
Some went to Brandeis, Some went to the new Ziegler space, some came here.
The Rare Book Room is now going to the National Library in Jerusalem,
Right, and then some are being transferred elsewhere.
which is,
They go to the
which is,
National Library in Jerusalem.
Yeah.
yeah, which is wonderful.
Okay, now.
So it'll be
Just the rare book room, not the
be
whole
available
library.
for scholars and everything else.
That's a bracha.
10. All right.
There we go.
Alan, you want to lead?
But it's
Sure.
a scandal of the Los Angeles Jewish community that they did not preserve a great library and a very good and rare bookstore.
All right.
Be ashamed of ourselves.
Mincha begins on page 2. Almost there. Right here. 216, 215, 214. Got it on?
Got it. Ashrei Shevetecha, Odi Halucha Tzela, Hashem Shalei Tila LeDavid. Tiladna Yedavepi, Vivavecha Basashem Kachalelam Vahed, Venachnak Yaha, Metaviad Alam, Hallelujah, Uvalitzion Goel, Shabbat Adonai. Ve'ata kadosh yoshev tilo Yisrael, v'kara zel zeh ve'amar, kadosh, 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 Adonai tzvo v'lo chalav tzvodo. V'tisa eni ruach v'shmach ma'kvodo, baruch v'ad Adonai mimcha. Titen Emele Yaakov, Chesed L'Avraham, Asher Nishbat L'Avotenu mi'imei kedem. V'yivdechu v'chayodei shemecha, ki lo azalta doshecha Adonai, Adonai chafetz l'man tzidko, yagdil dora v'yadir.
Trash 217.
Yitgada v'yitgada shemei v'abaha, v'amad divrei chirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayedecho be'Yisrael, b'agala v'zman gavi, v'imru amen. Yesh v'abarach, l'lam l'mei maya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitma v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yidel v'yidel hashmer kudesha b'rihu, le'elam ingo b'chata v'shirata, tushpa ta v'nechamata, dameron be'alma v'imru amen. V'anit vilati l'chadonai ad ratzon, Elohim b'rav chastecha, aneni v'med yishecha, v'yehi bin Aaron, v'yomer Moshe, kuma Adonai v'yavutz oivecha, yanusim esanecha mibanecha, ki mitzion tetzei Torah, dvar Adonai miYerushalayim, baruch shnatan Torah, le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato. Gadlu Adonai tiro shemo yachdav.
Adonai Adulav, v'gvurav v'tifer v'netzach v'hod, ki chov hashamayim u'va'aretz, lecha Adonai mamlecha, v'manaseh lechol erosh, Ramemu Adonai Eloheinu, v'ishtachavu l'adam raglav kadoshu, Ramemu Adonai Eloheinu, v'ishtachavu lehar kodsho, ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. We might just have to roll it a little bit because we didn't have service isn't here today. It's probably just at last week's Parsha, because we weren't in here today, so shouldn't be too far. Yeah, so there's the priestly blessing. So it should be very close. Of course, it starts with Vayda Adonai. Okay. I think it's that way, because this is the priestly blessing, so. Yeah, this is still Naso. Vayda Adonai, is that it? Yeah, okay, great. Okay. ותגלה ותרא מלכותו לנו בזמן קרוב ויחום פתיתנו פליטת עמו בית ישראל לחנוך חסר רחמים ורצון ונאמר אמן. הכבוד הוא שכבוד לתורה יעמוד. You want the first aliyah? Yeah, I am looking at you. That's okay. That's okay. Yeah, oh, sorry. We're on page 299 in the back of the book, or if you're reading from the Chumash, we're just at the start of Parshat Behalotcha. Ta'amad. You're right, this side. Chanavat. Arya Vishena La'aliyah Rishona.
Baruch et Adonai hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu et torato. Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen.
Amen. Vaydaber Adonai Moshe lemor, daber el Aharon, v'amata elav, v'halataka anerod, el mol pnei hamanara, yerush yivad hanerod, v'yas ken Aharon, el mol pnei hamanara, he'ele nerataka, kasher tiva Adonai et Moshe, v'zeh ma'aseh hamanara, mishas achav, ad yerecha, ad bichak mishakihi, kamareh, asher her Adonai et Moshe ken asah et hamanara.
Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam natan b'tochenu. Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Ta'amad. Now you can go there.
Backwards.
Rivka bat Chava v'Yaakov Aliyah Shniya.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך,
Baruch Adonai Barach Le'olam Va'ed.
ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד, ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר בחר בנו מכל העמים, ונתן לנו את תורתו, ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen.
Amen. Vaydaber Adonai Moshe lemor, kach et avim mitot ben Yisrael, v'tacharta otam, v'kol ta'aseh lachem l'tacharam, hazeh lachem mehatad, v'heviru ta'ar kol basaram, v'yibsu b'dechem titcharum, v'lachu par ben-bakar, v'min chato, solut v'lol bashaman, ufar sheni ben-bakar, tichach l'chataham, v'cherafta et avim lifnei chomoed, v'hitata et kol adahat ben Israel.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחיי עולם נטע בתוכנו, ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Ya'amad Harav.
Munish Gershon ben Yeshua.
Wait, say it again.
Munish
Munish Gershon ben Yeshua.
V'chana Rivka.
V'chana Rivka l'Aliyah Shlishit.
ברכו את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד. ברכתו אדוני אלוהינו בכל מה שבחבנו מכל עמים ונתן לנו את תורתו. ברכתו אדוני נותן התורה.
אמן. זכרו את הדברים לפני ושמחו בני ישראל.
לפני אדוני.
לפני אדוני ושמחו בני ישראל את ידיכם הלוויים והניף אחרון הלוויים נפל לפני אדוני מאת בני ישראל והיו לעבוד עבודת אדוני והלוויים ישמחו את ידיכם על ראש הפרים ויעשה את אחד התת ולאחד עולה לאדוני לכפר הלוויים והימרתה את עבדים לפני אחרון לפני בניו והנפת אותם תדופה לאדוני והיהתה את הלוויים מתוך בני ישראל והיו להם הלוויים.
ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר נתן לנו תורת אמת וחמת בתוכנו. ברוך אתה אדוני נותן התורה.
Amen. Ya'amod hamagbiya. Deborah, you want to rap for us? Ta'amod hagolelet. Please rise. Okay, I'll do it. וזאת התורה ששם משה לפני בני ישראל על פי אדוני ביד משה. עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה ותומכי המאושר. עץ חיים היא למחזיקים בה ותומכי המאושר. דרכיה דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום. דרכיה דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה שלום. יא נה נה יא נה 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 יא נה 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 יא נה 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 יא נה 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 나 야 나 나 나 나 야 나 나 나 나 나 야 dear Torah ve'ya dear. I know we have one one yard site that I'll do for someone who's on Zoom, and then Heather has one as well. Does anybody else have an El Male for today or yard site for today? Okay, Heather, why don't we do you first because you're in the room. You can come up, yeah. And who's it for, Heather? Your dad, okay. I'll need his name when I pause, yeah. Do you want to hold the Torah? You don't have to. It's not that heavy, no. Yeah? Here, you can come closer to me so I can hear the name. El male rachamim shochein במרומים המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מצהירים לנשמת אריה בן נוח ומלכה שהלך לעולמו בגן עדן תהא מנוחתו. אנא בעל הרחמים הסירהו בסתר כנפיך לעולמים וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתו. אדוני הוא נחלתו וינוח בשלום המשכבו ונאמר אמן. Do you want to share a memory? I can take the Torah.
Before it gets too heavy. I feel like I've used up all my things in the last few years. Let's see. Well, my dad was he was very involved in his shul, and before he moved to Vegas in our shul here in Torrance. And in fact, my parents in 1973, when I was very young, decided that they no longer wanted to be part of the conservative shul in Palos Verdes. So a family came to them and said, help us, we've got this guy from New York coming, and he's very young, and we're going to build a Chabad in Torrance. And they didn't know from Chabad or really any of this, and they're like, okay. So next thing I knew, we were like founding members of the Chabad, and it really like kind of changes your life, you know, you can imagine. And the whole thing in Torrance, it's such a weird spot to have a Chabad, and the rabbi got like cited for crossing the street without hitting the walk button, and he couldn't sign the ticket, and they wanted to take him to jail, he couldn't get in the car, like all these things. But yeah, so then my dad started like going to the Gemara classes and morning minyan, and it clearly had its impression left on me, so that's.
Yehi Zichro Baruch. May his memory forever be a blessing to you. This is for Tybal's mom, so that we won't get to hear memories right now. I'm sure when we're in classes with her on Zoom, she can share a little bit about her mom with us. El male rachamim shochen במרומים המצא מנוחה נכונה תחת כנפי השכינה במעלות קדושים וטהורים כזוהר הרקיע מזהירים לנשמת רחלי עבדיתה והלל שהלכה לעולמה בגן עדן תהא מנוחתה אנא בעל הרחמים, הסיריה בסתר כנפיך לעולמים, וצרור בצרור החיים את נשמתה. אדוני הוא נחלתה, ותנוח בשלום המשכבה, ונאמר אמן. Yehi Zichra Baruch, and Tybal, I hope you are finding comfort in her memory today. Page 221, as Alan finishes the Torah service for us.
Hallelujah, Shem Adonai, Ki niskar shemo levado, Lord, Shamayim ve'yarim geren le'amo, Dilo lachar sidda, v'livnei Yisrael am karovo, Hallelujah, leDavid mizmor. Usu pidchei olam v'yavo melech hakavod, Musa melech hakavod, Adonai tzvot, Hu melech hakavod, Selah. Uvnu ho yomar. It's Chaim Chil Maxim Bab Tam Chacham Meushad Rochateche Noam V'chonu Divoteha Shalom Hashivenu Adonai Lecha V'nashuva Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem.
Chatzikadosh into the whispered Amidah, page 222.
יתקדע ויקדש מאוהבה, ועמד יברכותיה והמליך מלכותיה בחייכון ובימיכון רחייכו בישראל, פגלה בזמן קריבים ואמן. יש ועבר ברך לעולם לעמל מיה, יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמר קדושה בריחו, לעיל אמינכו ברכתה ושירתה, תשפטה ונחמתה דרן בעלמא ועמו, אמן.
Mida, please continue at your own pace. Alan will begin the repetition for us on page 223. We'll come together for the Kedusha on page 225.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Eloi Avotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzhak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel Elohei Leah Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor v'Norah Eloyon Gomer Chasadim Tovim v'Konei HaKol V'Zocher Chastei Avod Mevi Goel Livnei V'Nehem L'man Shmo Be'ava Melech Ozer U'Fakeir U'Moshiach U'Magen Baruch atah Adonai Magen Avraham Fokei Tzara אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מלחמת הרב להושיע, מוריד הטל, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מלחמת ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים והופך חולים ומתיר אסורים, מקיים מנתו לשני עפר, מלחמוך בר גבורות ומידו מלך, מלך מביט וחיים מצמיח ישועה, ונאמן נתן לחיות מתים, ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב היד נביאך וקרא זה אל זה ואמר. קדוש, 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 ענה צבאו, מלוך על הארץ כבודו, למתן ברוך ימינו. ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו, דברי קודשך כתוב לאמור. ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור יגוד לך, לנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו. מבינו לימוש לעולם ועד, כי המלך גדול וקדוש אתה, ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. אתה אחד ושמך אחד, מקרי סוגו אחד בארץ, תפארת גדולה ועטרת ישועה. יום מנוחה קדש עולמך נתת, אברהם יגל, יצחק ירנן, יעקב ובניו ינוחו בו. מנוחת אהבה ונדבה, מנוחת אמת ואמונה, מנוחת שלום ושלווה והשקט והבטח, מנוחה שלמה שאתה רוצה בה. יכירו בניך וידעו כי איתך היא מנוחתם, ועל מנוחתם יקדישו את שמך. אלוהינו ואלוהי אבותינו, רצה במנוחתנו, קדשנו במצוותיך, ותן חלקנו בתורתך, סבנו מטובך ושמחנו בישועתך, וטהר ליבנו לעבדך באמת. חילנו אדוני אלוהינו, באהבה ורצון שבת קודשך, וינוחו בה מישראל מקדשי שמך. ברוך אתה אדוני, מקדש השבת. רצה אדוני אלוהינו וחסו את תפילתם, והשבת הודה לדביר ביתך, תפילתם רבת ברצון, יהי רצון תמיד ישראל עמך, ותחזינה עינינו, בשובך לציון ברחמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, המחזיר שכינתו לציון, מודים אנחנו לך. הטוב כאילו חלו רחמך, ברחם כאילו תמו חסדך, מעולם קיווינו לך. ועל כל המתברך בנעם שמך מלכנו, תמיד עולם ועד. ולכל הימדוך סלע, ויעלו את שמך באמת, ישועתנו ועזרתנו סלע. ברוך אתה אדוני, הטוב שמך לכנה להודות. שלום רב ישראל עמך, ועל כל יושבי תבל תשים לעולם. כתוב מלך אדון לכל השלום, וטוב בעיניך. לברך את עמך ישראל בכל עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. ברוך אתה אדוני, המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום. צדקתך צדק לעולם, ותורתך אמת, פיסתך אלוהים, עד מרום אשר עשית גדולות, אלוהים מי כמוך, צדקתך גואל, משפטך תהום רבה, אדם ובהמה תושיע אדוני. קדיש שלם?
Oh, you're on a different side.
Yes. I got it, 247. יתגד אביגד השם רבה, בעמדי והקיותי ומליכמחותי בחייכון ובימיכון וחייכו בישראל, בגלה בזמן קריב עמו אמן. יש מרבה ברח לילה ולא בעלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמי קדושה בריחו. לאל מן כה ברכתה ושירתה, תושבתה ונחם בת אדרמן בעלמה ועמו אמן. תתגבר צלותם וברכון דחו ישראל קדם ושמע ועמו אמן. יהי שלום רב מן שמיים וחיים אלינו וערכו ישראל ועמו אמן. עושה שלום עממה והוא יעשה שלום עלינו וערכו ישראל ועמו אמן. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד.
Page 232.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה בעלמא דברה יותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון ובימיכון וחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו. לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמא ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה מן שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן.
Amen. Yashakov to Alan. Go and get some food, get some nosh, and we'll come back together in like 10-ish minutes and do some learning. Please rise. Go get some food. And please eat, yeah, right. I know, I wonder if like the further out that people get from their last shot, the worse it is.
I was telling my husband.
Oh, the different foods that they have, different
Yeah,
foods.
yeah.
So you'd be at the head, you
Yeah.
know, it's
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I grew up with the.
I've gotten it once a year. I know like my parents and grandparents got it multiple times in the beginning, like they got like in succession, like every 6 months or whatever.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah. The first two I got whatever that times
Like, yeah, I can't
Yeah.
What it made
I
me-
forget what the timing was,
Yeah.
but I got it then, and then I've gotten it like in October, November every year since. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh, okay, okay. My grandparents just had COVID. And they were fun. They're good, they're good.
Good, good.
Surprising how.
Yeah.
Everybody will agree she's got the nicest grandpa.
And the problem is that
I
on
agree.
the floor,
I agree.
They're big fans. They're big fans of
They don't- they
the
don't
Baron
make-
Bombs.
They don't make them nicer.
and yet they got.
I didn't know, someone told me that they had something to do with the book for the event that you and Elliot were honored for. Someone said to me, oh, your grandparents sponsored the book. I was like, I had no idea.
I don't know.
I also don't know. It's upstairs, I guess I could go look, but.
Well, they offered to buy, I said, I will.
I mean, it sounds like that, but
I'm here till Thursday,
I have no idea.
Yeah, I know.
What's going on Thursday?
They really are. I'll see them tomorrow. Jacob, he's in his third year. He's doing CPP this summer. Yeah.
Amazes people that.
Yeah, well, they've been around longer than I have.
Is it third of 4 or third of 5?
Third of 5. Yeah, he would have been in Israel this year. Which I think he is happy to not go, because his life is settled here. But I'm sorry that he's not going, because it's such a transformative year. I loved living there. It was my favorite year of running
It's a
school.
thorough mistake.
It's a total mistake.
Thorough mistake, and the school should go shame of itself.
Yeah, yeah.
Still here.
You know,
I happen to agree.
Yeah, I think the 1 year in Israel was always sometimes a
I
very
think they
powerful
should be
transformation.
liberal, I think they should be liberal with this is.
Sure, yeah. When people have a family or whatever.
Or people who have lived in Israel and
Right,
stuff
right,
like
right.
that, but
Yeah. Yep, I agree.
Sounds like this kid in a new class.
What about,
Is it a medical school class?
yeah, what about it?
Just said it sounds like it's a good group of people in the class.
Oh. Yeah, I think, yes. I think that they're very nice people. I think it's always interesting to see like what makes up a Ziegler class. So it's changed over time. When I was in school, there were like 50 students at all times across the years, not in one class, but Rabbi Singer Frank and I were in school at the same time. It was a big production, and now it's smaller, and so I think
Just got yourself another half hour.
it's yeah.
You're not in court.
But
I mean, I go
Very
to
good.
social workers to certain times sometimes.
Yeah.
Usually it's a virtual
Yeah, I guess
now.
so.
the needs rabbis have increased.
Yeah, it's a different lifestyle.
Yeah.
The shortage.
It comes down every day.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing. I see it on a lot of interviews, and it's just interesting to see like
Hearing aids.
the interests of people coming to medical school now, I think
Sheer.
are sometimes, not sometimes, are at times different than what they were, at least when I was in medical school. Time period is a second career, but when my class was mostly like right out of a master's program or whatever.
Right.
And now you're seeing more people who are second
No,
career.
but you had this bump.
He's great.
Chaim,
We love this guy.
Chaim,
You were a second career rabbi.
that's right.
He went for a semester because he had lived there before.
You know.
Where?
In
What are you talking
Israel.
Oh, I was just talking about in rabbinical school in general.
No, Chaim, but Chaim had full life before. And
Full life.
rabbinical.
He's now living his second life.
I think I'd even like my fifth.
He's like
Ellie
a cat.
Spitz did the
Right,
same.
exactly. You're on your fifth life. You have
He
4
was a
more.
lawyer.
Yeah, 4 more.
He was a lawyer and then became a rabbi.
Who?
Ellie Spitz.
Yes. Yeah. No, there are definitely people who came before me who were second career rabbis. I was just saying that now I think more often than not people are second career, not straight out of, like I came straight out of
Now,
My master class.
the more interesting thing is you have the students now who haven't lived as Jews before they decided to come out.
What did they live as?
And, no,
Raw facts from Rabbi Dr. Michael Fairbaum.
What did they live as?
it's very hard because to be a good rabbi, you have to be comfortable with Judaism. You also have to be comfortable with Jews.
Yes.
And there's a difference between the two.
And if you haven't done a real Pesach, they should definitely not admit you until you know you can survive that. I always say when people are converting, don't tell them about the truth about Pesach until after they've been.
No, I went to the thing on Shavuot with the.
Has anybody
the-
seen Eastern
like
Campbell
Joyce said?
stand up bit?
Did you
I
guys
haven't-
No.
say
It's
that
like
It was
almost 20
something, it
years
was
ago
really
I saw it
something.
when I was at
I
parties.
mean, you had to go, like you
2004.
have to do.
He did
Why would you guys
he's
choose
like one of
this?
those few people that sent a reform conversion and then a
They were
conservative
really
conversion.
done.
and an
They
Orthodox
were not.
conversion.
It
So part of
wasn't
the
because it was
stand-up
bad,
bit
it
was
was
all
good.
about that.
Really
Well,
wonderful.
this is a good joke, and you know the difference between Orthodox and conservative reform way.
I know this one, I'll be
How do you
quiet.
know what?
The
I don't know.
difference between a conservative and Orthodox and reform wedding.
Something about the yichud room.
In the reform wedding, the bride is pregnant.
Aye.
Conservative wedding, the rabbi is pregnant. In the Orthodox wedding, the
The
mother of
bride's
the
mother's
bride,
pregnant.
the mother of the bride is pregnant.
That's a very good joke.
I forgot about
How
that.
many,
tell that with
You've
certain
never heard
audiences,
that?
but that's a very good
how many Orthodox rabbis does it take to change a light bulb?
That is,
Change?
That's also very
I have one. There's an Orthodox rabbi, conservative, and Reform rabbi together, and they're tasting for the first time that fake shrimp stuff, you know, made out of whatever. And the Orthodox rabbi tastes it, oh, this is pretty good, I like it. And the conservative rabbi tastes it, yeah, you're right, it is pretty good. And the Reform rabbi tastes it, that is good, tastes just like the real thing.
there are three rabbi, priest, and minister getting together. And they are talking about what they'd like to have be said at their funerals. So the priest says, I'd like to be said that I was a dutiful servant of the church. Protestant minister said, I'd like them to say of me that I was a servant of God, brought many people to Christ. And the rabbi says, I'd like them to say, oh, there's a mistake, he's still moving. Right.
You're saying about the grandmother being pregnant, or the mother being pregnant, right? My mom is the 8th of 9 kids, and my grandmother had, my mom's younger sister, the 9th kid, after my mom's oldest sister had the first child. So the nephew was older than his own aunt.
All right. Though those jokes were all fabulous and we could do this all day, I think we're going to talk about Sota, which is just as funny. We're in Parshat Be'elotecha, but because of everything that happened this morning in services, there wasn't like a formal sermon slot. And so I wanted to be able to talk about the Sota ritual because I think that it's especially important when our Torah teaches us lessons that are uncomfortable for us to learn about them and to learn about why they might be in our Torah and why we might come back to them every year and why they were put into our Torah, right? There are many ways in which we imagine the Torah was put together, redacted, etc., whether you believe that was by God, by Moshe, or by people. There are still many ways in which things could have been left out or put in. Doesn't matter how it was written. And yet things like the Sota ritual and many, many other stories, right? The stories of rape, stories of any number of stories that make you uncomfortable in the Torah, we still have them in the Torah. And lots of rabbis ask, well, okay, so now what, right? Do we not teach them because we don't believe in these things anymore? Or do we teach them davka because we want people to understand why they are in our Torah and to be able to learn from them? So though we're not still in Parshat Naso, we're going to learn a little bit about the Sota ritual. There are 10 copies and 14 people, so maybe.
I already have my copy.
Oh, Marshall already has his copy. Marshall's a straight A student. Always comes prepared. Marshall's already done that. Marshall should just teach this text. He's already he's already done the learning. So the first thing that we're gonna do is just read through the Sota ritual. I'm sure that you know the general premise of what the Sota ritual was, but we're gonna read through the actual details of what the ritual was and how it came to be. Okay. I'm just going to read because if people are on Zoom, they won't be able to hear you if you read. So I'm going to read, and then I'm going to ask you after this first paragraph what you're gleaning already from this experience. Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, if any man's wife has gone astray and broken faith with him, very interesting in the Hebrew that it says ish, right? It doesn't actually say any like it does in the Hebrew, but it's emphasizing all men. So ish, all men, any men. There's not really a great translation in English, is why it says any, but I just wanted to point out that it just uses the category of ish twice to emphasize all. And that a man has had sex with her unbeknownst to her husband, and she keeps secret the fact that she has defiled herself without being forced, and there is no witness against her. But a fit of jealousy comes over him, and he has wrought about the wife who has defiled herself. Or if a fit of jealousy comes over one, and he has wrought up about his wife, although she has not defiled herself. We're going to read what happens next. So what is this? What are the bases for this Sota ritual? Suspicion. Okay, great. Suspicion. What else?
And it's a man's world to be able to determine this.
Yeah, very good. It's a man's world to determine and not necessarily know, but to just have a hunch. And then we're going to see that what comes after that there is this suspicion that something might have happened by a man, right? Only by a man. And therefore, now the woman's going to have to go through what she's going to go through, and we're going to read about it in a second. Yeah, Deborah.
This only occurred to me reading this time.
Yeah.
Because I deal with a lot of cases of families who there's a lot of domestic violence
Yeah.
going on, and it's sort of positive thing maybe that there's this ritual that you are supposed
Great.
to go to rather than just beat your wife at home.
Yeah. Yeah, so Deborah's making a really great point that in a world where there always has been, obviously, violence in the home based off of suspicion or based off of just jealousy, which is the word that is used here, that a man has this fit of jealousy, a spirit of jealousy, literally, that maybe there's something actually quite beautiful, well, beautiful is not the right word, practical in having a ritual that is going to separate the woman out from his emotions and his rage, such that there is not domestic violence that might erupt in the home. One of the commentaries that we'll get to is going to allude to that exactly. That even though this wasn't necessarily a ritual that women looked forward to, obviously, that it was better than the alternative of potentially staying in a home where she was never going to be able to say, no, I didn't, don't hurt me, right? But rather now this ritual was going to somehow, quote, prove something that then she might be protected. Do you want to say something?
Yeah, but the reason it's about men and women is because the Torah presumes that men are polygamous.
Right.
That polygamy is permissible, and therefore you can't in the same way suspect your husband as you can.
Correct. Right. Thank you for pointing that out. This idea that, of course, it's going man to woman because men could have many different wives, whereas women could only have one husband, right? So that is the reason that it's going in that direction. Thank you for mentioning that. Anything else that we're noticing here before we go to the actual ritual?
Just
Yeah, Marshall.
The last words in that first sentence.
Yes.
Ma'al ma'al.
Yeah.
I know there's a concept of me'ilah, as a trespass or, the sacrilege in the temple itself. And that unfaithfulness here.
Yeah. Are you asking or are you saying? Are you telling?
I'm just saying that.
Well,
Yeah.
she desecrated the marriage. And that's
Right. So I think there's a connection here, but between this translation that you're giving that has connection to the temple and also to the desecration of a holy union, which is in this case the marriage. Right. Great. Yeah. A fee, you said?
Yes, I don't know if 1/10 of an ephah of barley is a lot, but I mean, it's not just
True.
like, okay, you can make wild accusations, like, you wanna do this, lay the barley down too.
Great. I don't think we've gotten there yet, have we?
No, we haven't. You're reading.
Okay. I was like, did we get to the A5 part yet? Okay, great. Hold that thought. Hold that thought. Yeah, Rebecca.
Just the other thing that's kind of obvious here is that there isn't a case where he actually knows for sure.
Exactly.
In both cases, she hides it once he somehow finds out, but it's not clear what happens in the other case.
Right. There's in both of these cases that are written here in this top part in the last sentence, right? There's suspicion on both sides, right? It's not necessarily the case that there's ever a reveal, so to speak, of what happens. It's she's hiding it. If anything had happened, it was hidden. Yeah.
But it's clear because there's no witness,
Right.
because if there was a witness, then you have a case of adultery, which results in direct punishment.
Mm-hmm.
So since there is no witness at that point, it's gotta be suspicion.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
You need
Right.
one witness or two witnesses?
One witness is sufficient.
Robert Berenbaum says one witness. We'll go with one witness. Okay. All right. So now let's go to the bottom part here. So Bamidbar 5 verses 15 through 25. So the Hebrew here is going to, I'm going to read the English, but you're going to have to flip the page. All the Hebrew is on one page, but the English is divided up. The man shall bring his wife to the priest. Okay. So first of all, we all know from things like Tzara'at that a priest was not just like a rabbi is in a community, right? The priest was kind of a catch-all for any kind of advice giving. It could be medical. In this case, it could be relational. It often didn't end with the priest when it had to do with like judicial pieces, right? There was actually a system for that. But in this particular case, going to the priest first to know what to do, right? The priest was the first stop. I think my wife had an affair. I'm going to go to the priest, right? Now, that's not to say, by the way, that people don't come to their rabbis and say, I have a feeling that my marriage is breaking up over X, Y, and Z incident, and to hear, pastoral counseling, I guess you could say, on that matter, right? That's not to say that doesn't happen. However, the priest is about to give this entire, really just over the top ritual for this man to have his wife do so that something can potentially bubble up, no pun intended, as to whether or not she is guilty. Okay, so whether or not that was the priest's place, it was back then. Glad I don't do that today. And he shall bring as an offering for her 1/10 of an ephah. So this gets back to what Deborah was saying, that there is some kind of a cost, right? That if he has suspicion that he has to kind of put his money where his mouth is, he does have to somehow go about giving something of himself to go through this process. No oil shall be poured upon it, and no frankincense shall be laid on it, because it's a meal offering of jealousy, a meal offering of remembrance, which recalls wrongdoing. So because this particular sacrifice, it's bland, right? Nothing gets put on it to make it any more special than it needs to be. The priest shall take sacral water in an earthen vessel, and taking some of the earth that is on the floor of the tabernacle. So here again, Marshall connects back to the temple. The priest shall put it into the water. So now I just want to point out, everything we are about to read is just going to sound gross, because it was, right? There was nothing medical about this. There's no like in education, when a kid does something wrong, you're supposed to have a punishment that matches the action. This clearly has nothing to do with whether or not she had an affair, but they're going to make her feel uncomfortable, and somehow that magical potion is going to get her to show physically or potentially emotionally whether or not she is guilty. So you take this water, you put it in this thing, then you take dirt and you put it into the water. After he has made the woman stand before God, the priest shall bear the woman's head, right? So now you're going to actually uncover her, right, in a way that was seen as immodest, right? Her hair was covered before because she was married, and now you're going to take her head covering off and place upon her hands the meal offering of remembrance, which is a meal offering of jealousy. And in the priest's hands shall be the water of bitterness that induces the spell. So what's happening to the woman here? Yeah, she's being humiliated, right? And still we don't know whether or not she actually did anything wrong. Right? The husband assumes that she did something wrong, and so now we're going to humiliate her so that hopefully we find out if she did something wrong.
You know,
Yeah.
it's interesting. She's holding the flower, she's drinking the water. It's like if she's guilty, she's going to become chametz.
That's interesting.
What?
Chametz. Well, that's interesting. Chametz.
Like, rising.
Yeah, that's it. That's very interesting. That's what I thought you were gonna say, and I hadn't thought about this before, is that when someone, has anybody had a get ceremony or been witness to a get ceremony? Okay, so when a get is given, it's the same stance for the woman, right? She's actually given the get in her hand in a similar kind of fashion, which is actually where I thought you were going, Deborah. But the chametz was a real turn. The priest shall adjure the woman, saying to her, if no man has lain with you, if you have not gone astray in defilement while married to your husband, be immune to harm from this water of bitterness that induces the spell. So if you didn't sleep with another man and therefore you're not guilty, hopefully you have a really strong stomach and nothing's going to happen to you, and then we're going to prove that you are not guilty. Logical consequence? Probably not. Yeah, Ellen.
Depends how much of the earth they put into the water that's making her drink, because if it's a little
Yeah.
bit, maybe you get by. If it's a lot, then it could
That's
be a real
true.
problem.
Right. Yeah, that's true. It's probably not great to have any dirt in your water, but you're right. There's levels of dirt water that one can probably sustain. If you have gone astray while married to your husband and have defiled yourself, if a man other than your husband has had carnal relations with you, killed bug, here the priest shall administer the curse of adjuration to the woman, as the priest goes on to say to the woman, may God make you a curse and an imprecation among your people, as Adonai causes your thigh to sag and your belly to distend. What do you think that could mean? And then Rabbi Bearmom can tell us what it means. But what do you think that could mean? That your thigh sags and your belly distends.
Pregnant?
Okay. So it could be that you look pregnant, or that you somehow show signs of pregnancy. That, Rabbi Bearmom, do you want to share with us what you think it is? Okay. Okay. Does anybody else have an explanation? Yeah, that's exactly why we're learning it. The other yeah, go ahead.
Oh, it's deliberately uncomfortable.
The text, yeah.
Look, it's an ancient trial by ordeal. And the question then becomes, if it's to resemble pregnancy, the question is whether you have an actual pregnancy.
Correct, right.
Or you have a pregnancy out of guilt.
Right.
Which would be
The distension of the belly, yeah.
extension of the belly.
Yeah.
Out of guilt and out of this taking place.
Right. The thigh sagging piece, what I've heard, and again, everything that we are assuming about this, we don't know for a fact that it was real. So what I'm about to say is just one commentary. It's not necessarily accurate or truth, but that if there had been a baby, or I shouldn't say a baby, if there had been any cells or fetus, that this would actually cause a miscarriage. That this was some kind of euphemism for miscarriage. So whether your belly distended to either make it look like you were pregnant or to make it obvious that you were, right, whether real or not, or that you then lost a pregnancy. That could be what they're talking about here in euphemistic language. Again, no one knows whether or not that is accurate or true, but all to say, none of this was good, right? Nothing was going to happen to her body that was comfortable or good for her, and all at the expense of suspicion from her husband. And the woman, may this water that induces the spell enter your body, causing the belly to distend and the thigh to sag, and the woman shall say, Amen, Amen. So the woman has to actually somewhat agree back, right? Has to actually say like, yeah, all right, I guess I'm in this. This is what we're doing. And to go back to Deborah's point, is that better than what could have happened to her had she stayed home and the husband thought that she was guilty of something? Maybe. Seems kind of ridiculous and horrific to have to choose between those two things, but maybe. He is, sorry, I keep skipping lines. Verse 23, the priest shall put these curses down in writing and rub it off into the water of bitterness. So more stuff going in. He is to make the woman drink the water of bitterness that induces the spell, so that the spell-inducing water may enter into her to bring on bitterness. Then the priest shall take from the woman's hand the meal offering of jealousy, elevate the meal offering before the Lord, and present it on the altar. So that's the whole thing. And then it goes on, obviously, in Bamidbar to discuss what happens when she's innocent, which is lovely and not lovely, it's good that that's in there, not lovely what happens, but good that that's in there. I didn't bring it today because I just wanted to focus on the ritual itself. Other than this is bad, why did we do this? Why is this in our Torah? Any thoughts on this that people have? Yeah, Deborah.
Other than bringing the barley, there's no role for the husband.
Right.
Public or
yeah
private with just the priest and...
Great. So there's an element here of the husband does have some role, but it's not seen as really a prominent role at all. I think she's guilty. I'm going to bring her forward. As Deborah just mentioned, it's possible it was private. It's also possible that it was public. There's definitely humiliation involved, and he's kind of handing it all over. Like, here's my wife, and here's the stuff of which you can do this ritual, and I'm just going to hand it all over. Let me know what comes out on the other side. Did you have a hand, Rebecca? Is that your hand? No? Okay. Okay, let's look at a few commentaries, because I do want us to see a few pieces here. We're not going to look at the Mishnah Sota piece just because it will take us down a rabbit hole and we don't have time for a rabbit hole. But I want you to see it. There's a very problematic piece in Mishnah Sota, that says that people shouldn't teach their daughters Torah because it will fill them with knowledge, basically. But they say that it will fill them with foolishness. Right, and the Gemara actually goes on to describe it, to be able to actually explain it away because of the Sota ritual, which is really interesting. So just it's there if you'd like to look at it later. We're not gonna go down that rabbit hole right now, and I think you should teach your girls Torah. If I had not learned Torah, I would not be here right now. So thanks for the education. All right. Rabbi Harold Kushner, this is actually in your Eitz Chaim Chumash, so if you want to read more on it, you can. From verse 28, which I didn't bring you, it's just 3 verses later. If the woman is found innocent, she will be able to, quote, retain seed, as foreseen that she will be restored to a life of love with her husband. Meaning, if she's found innocent, great, so nice, thanks, glad we did that ritual, let's go home, we can have more babies. Right, exactly what everyone wants to do after having to undergo this ritual, right? Like, yeah, let's have more kids. That's what we're excited about after doing the Sota ritual. But even, he says, if the ordeal and a subsequent pregnancy turn the husband's heart back to his wife, what will it take to restore her trust in him and affection for him? Right, husbands at this time, as Rabbi Berenbaum mentioned earlier, for better and for worse, had the upper hand. Right, because they needed for there to be generations that came after them. So there was very real possibility that after this Sota ritual, no matter how the woman felt, that they were going to go home, and that any time later there were going to be children born to this relationship. that might be reality. And the husband might be able to say, oh, she was telling the truth. But how does the woman feel? Right? How can the woman possibly think that this is a loving relationship if she was accused of something and then humiliated because of that accusation and then she was innocent? Right? How could you imagine being, and this goes back to Deborah's first point, that when dealing with an abusive relationship, way too often do we just stay stuck and think, all right, that was that one time, that's not going to happen again, and move on. But those feelings of anger and mistrust and all of that don't go away, right? This woman's never going to trust her husband again. No way. No way. Yeah, Rebecca.
So I think that when I read it, I'm thinking a little bit from the point of view of the potential baby.
Okay.
And now if
Which we don't know that there actually was, but if there was, yeah, okay.
If there is infidelity and the wife, there is a chance that she is pregnant.
Yeah.
There is a child that might be born
Yeah,
into a difficult
Sure.
situation. And so in some ways, this might be a good solution.
right. I think
for
that's,
the husband
Yes.
and the wife,
right,
that we go, we do this crazy thing.
Right.
If you're pregnant, this is bad enough to make you abort.
yeah.
And we move on, and we both can move on, because sometimes because it's better than maybe having a child that is not loved,
Yeah.
that is not wanted.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I had never thought about that before, and I think that goes back to Deborah's point of domestic violence, right? Like, what's the better of the two evils, right? Is it to go through this, and if there was some kind of life, get rid of it so that that life is not being brought into this world, right? That those cells don't turn into life into this world, and is there the possibility that this is kind of the better option of making sure that whatever now happens with this guy who at least he has some trust in her now that she's gone through this horrific ritual, and it'll just be on his terms. Again, like, as I'm saying this, I'm like, wow, this all sounds terrible, right? None of this sounds good, right? But I think we're choosing between those two evils. And you're right, like, maybe back in those days where women had no agency, was this a way for them to have a little bit of agency that they were actually being given, that they didn't even know that they had? Heather.
Like, he could be jealous every month.
Yeah, it's a good question. Right. So Heather's question was, is there a limit to how many times he's allowed to be jealous? I didn't go deeply into that question. I had the same question myself, and I didn't go into the text to see if there was an answer to that. Do you know off the top of your head, Roy Berenbaum?
At that point, he would get some priestly.
Right.
It doesn't say, and if the husband brings her back like 20 times.
Right.
the priest smacks him upside the head.
Right. Right. If he comes back his third time, the priest says, "Just you're done here." Right.
There's a concept in American law if somebody brings too many cases.
A vexatious litigant.
What?
A vexatious litigant.
A vexatious litigant.
We don't necessarily have that here.
Right. Right. Well, we don't know that we have it here. Right. The other thing about the Torah, right, because it's such a brilliant question. The other thing about the Torah is that we get told of these, I'm going to say exaggerated for my point. I don't know that they were actually exaggerated, but we get these exaggerated stories. And I want to believe that we are told them because we needed to learn from the lessons beyond them, not because they were actually happening that often. So that doesn't mean that they didn't happen at all, right? There has to be, right, for every lie, there's a little bit of truth. So that some story had to be made up of some reality or thought somewhere. But I think the fact that we don't, at least that I didn't come across like a limit for this, that hopefully this wasn't a thing where a man was just, every 6 months, it's time to go back to the priest and do a little sota ritual. Okay, I want to get to Ruth Calderon and Aviva Zornberg, and then we're going to do Bierkat. So someone think about who is really feeling Bierkat tonight. Okay. Ruth Calderon. I'm going to skip around a little bit because it's a longer passage, but it says here, the biblical ritual of the sota was later
We should say who Ruth Calderon is.
Okay, go ahead. You want
Ruth Calderon is a very unique figure, has a PhD in Talmud from the Hebrew University, served as a member of Knesset, but is not of the Orthodox persuasion. And consequently, she gave her maiden speech in the Knesset by teaching the Talmud,
Yeah.
which ironically irked the Orthodox.
Shocking.
Irked the Orthodox enormously, especially because she knew whereof she spoke.
Didn't she found a Beit Midrash for
As
non-religious
Beit-
people?
she had a Beit Midrash for, generally for Jews who were interested in learning the tradition of all persuasions. And the other thing is that in Israel itself, she became an intriguing figure because Talmud was supposed to be a monopoly of religious men.
Right.
And here she was primarily a secular woman. The Sephardim accepted her in a way that it irked the Ashkenazim. So when you see her commentary, you have to
Thank you.
consider
Yeah.
the very unique role
Yeah. Yeah.
Ruth Calderon played and plays in Israel. Fascinating, interesting
Yeah.
woman. I know her reasonably well. And
Anytime you want to bring her to Tom Batham, we'll have her. She's a fascinating and really heroic person in our era. And her book, A Bride for One Night, is a real piece of Torah, and everyone should read it and learn from it. And it's a very powerful book, which is what we're going to quote from right now. The biblical ritual of the sota was later tempered by the sages. They sought to abolish the ritual in an attempt to replace dramatic divine intervention with pragmatic human solutions. The sages encouraged the couple to separate by means of a financial agreement with as little hoopla as possible. The site of judgment was thus shifted from the temple to the courtroom. Moreover, in an effort to limit the practical application of the ritual, the sages created an intermediate stage in which the husband is required to state explicitly, in the presence of two witnesses, the identity of the man whom he suspects. We didn't read that part, that comes later. As a result, many women were saved from death and from the force of their husband's jealousy, and more important to the sages, the community was thus spared unnecessary upheavals and disturbances of the peace. So this gets back to what Deborah was bringing up. Deborah could have written this passage. Deborah brought up two of these pieces, right? One, that there was this financial kind of buy-in almost to the ritual being done. And second, that maybe this was a protection in some ways, that this was a way in which the women were being, or the couple or the community were being protected at the expense, obviously, of this woman, but protected from other things that could have been worse. The sages were averse to supernatural intervention. They preferred tranquility to truth, and they formulated principles that forged a new atmosphere in which jealousy was less rampant. By the way, Ruth, as Rabbi Berenbaum mentioned earlier, she's not in this passage. She is not talking about the Torah's interpretation of the Sota ritual. She's talking about the Gemara's interpretation of the Sota ritual. So when we're talking about sages here, we're talking about the rabbis writing about the Sota ritual, not about the Torah's depiction, which we just read in Bamidbar.
she's really using, since the original was she's really using the word chazal.
Yes, thank you. Yes, I just didn't want people to think that the sages were referring somehow to like Moshe or God. But yes, chazal. They preferred tranquility to truth, and they formulated principles that forged a new atmosphere in which jealousy was less rampant. These principles include most sexual acts are attributed to the husband. In other words, children of uncertain paternity are assumed to belong to the husband. In addition, they declared the man who raises the child and not the man who conceives it is considered the father. That is to say, fatherhood is constituted by the act of child rearing rather than procreation. Thus, the enlightened force of leadership won over more primitive ritual. Did this indeed improve the situation of women? It's hard to tell. No. As the story suggests, a woman suspected of adultery in the rabbinic period could find herself divorced with a child in her womb, abandoned and penniless without even a dramatic story to share. So she is taking a lens that many of you got to at different points throughout reading the text itself from the Torah, which is maybe there was something to this ritual to actually protect a woman, again, not without harm and not without humiliation and not without discomfort. And was it better than the alternative? Right? And she says it so beautifully in such a way that she's not uplifting the Sota ritual to be this thing we should bring back in the 21st century, but she's saying that maybe there was something that our rabbis understood when they describe it again in the Talmud, that our rabbis understood about why this needed to be mentioned, taught, understood, continued to be taught as a way of which the woman had some agency. The last one, yeah. Okay.
Also, as let's consider it for a moment from the man's perspective, also as a way of limiting the impact of jealousy. Because if you're jealous and that means you have to go to court and name somebody whom you suspect is seducing your wife, that also is quite an embarrassment for the man as well.
Oh, so you think that the Sota ritual potentially limited the amount of times that a man would be willing to do that?
Absolutely.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, interesting.
That's quite embarrassing for men.
Sure. Right, and that piece of it we only hear from the Talmud, but right, that is a good point, that maybe the Sota ritual from the male side of things, from the husband's side of things, was also so. I love that she uses the word hoopla in a book, right? That there was so much pomp and circumstance that maybe it also kept the man from doing this too many times, to go back to Heather's point. Okay, Aviva Zornberg, and then we're gonna do Birkat. So whoever's gonna lead, get ready. The adulterous woman embodies the anxiety of unreason. We could spend an entire 45 minutes just on that one statement. The normatively sane recoil from her madness. Fear turns into scorn and humiliation, for she carries with her a whole range of unfathomable experience, from insanity to folly. By the way, I didn't say this. Aviva Zornberg is a modern day Torah commentator. Perhaps the most important feature of the Sota episode is its ambiguity. The situation of the husband, the apparent subject of the passage, is one of doubt. Either his wife is guilty or she is innocent. The two opposing scenarios are enacted in the opening verses. Either she has in fact committed adultery, unwitnessed, undetected, and the husband's jealousy is justified, or else his jealousy is unjustified. Only in this situation, where her guilt or innocence can be decided in no other way, does the Sota ordeal take place. In this case, divine aid is sought, and the general principle that issues are to be decided by due process, by witness, and by majority rulings is, in this exceptional case, set aside. So I wanted to bring this today, not because I think it's something that, we should all go out into the world and practice Sota, but because I think that it's important for us to lean into the discomfort of our tradition as much as we uplift the things that we find beautiful. This is in our tradition in lots of different places, in the Torah, in the Gemara, in the Mishnah before the Gemara. We understand that this was something, whether or not it happened, we understand that this is something that was contended with by the Torah and also by our rabbis in a, quote, more modern day. So my hope is that you've come to understand this in a different way today. Maybe it's through this lens of Ruth Calderon or Aviva Zornberg, that there are ways in which the Sota ritual, though it sounds terrible, were actually in a crazy way, and the sentence sounds bizarre to even say, helping a couple, helping a woman, helping a potentially unborn child, that there was something about it that was keeping holiness in relationship and in community. And for us to understand that sometimes in our tradition, there are things that are uncomfortable that we have to contend with for us to also understand the beautiful things in our tradition. So thank you for learning this with me. I hope you don't have nightmares. And we're gonna, yeah.
Are there any sources that explain where the suspicion comes from? Whether the assumption is that she is pregnant?
Yeah.
And the husband doesn't feel that it was his child? Is that somewhere?
My guess is that there are in the Gemara. I didn't bring the Gemara sources because it's an entire Masechet, so I knew that it was going to be harder for us to get in through into the depths of that. But I'm sure there are in the Gemara. I could look for you and see. But that's where it would be if it's expounded anywhere, that's where it would be. Yeah.
I just want to say
Yeah.
one fun fact.
Yes.
Where Ruth Calderon says the man who raises the child and not the man who conceives it is considered the father, there's a very fun California appellate case called Zachariah D.
Okay.
That cites Dr. Seuss's book Horton Hatches an Egg, and it says the same thing. Since Horton sat on the egg, he's the father.
Wow.
Here,
Courtroom quoting Dr. Seuss.
no, say it again.
There's a California appellate case called Zachariah D. In Ray Zachariah D. That was the name of the kid. That quotes Dr. Seuss's book Horton Hatches an Egg, in which Maisie the bird lays the egg and then abandons it. Horton stays with the egg through snow and sits on the egg and hatches it. And the court cites that book and says the guy who acts like the father is the presumed father.
But let's also say something else. This has real implications if you take it on the question of adoption.
Sure.
Yes.
Sure.
Because adoption, in our case, makes the person who raises the child the actual father
Sure.
and the like.
Yeah.
Now, it also has something else, which is all Jewish ritual that calls you on the name of the father is based on a time in which the father is publicly proclaiming, "This is my child." And the reason that you name it, and the reason why the Brit is the father, is the sociological origin of that in all of the element, is the father claiming it as my child. And
As opposed to like Misha Berach, which is
because we know who the mother is,
Yeah.
and we accept the father as an act of faith.
interesting.
Although in California now you can have a presumed mother if somebody does not raise the child. It's complicated, but
Yeah.
it's kind of
But,
messy.
but it has on, for example, you say Kaddish, you say kosher for an adoptive
Right.
parent, all of that. So there are real implications in this.
Okay, before it's Sunday, let's do Birkat Hamazon, and then we'll do Mari. Anyone want to leave Birkat Hamazon?
I had bread, so.
Wow, thank you so much, Rabbi Singer Franks. No, thank you.
Shir Hamalot b'shuv Adonai et shivat Zion. Az Yomru Ba'Adonai, Yigdil Adonai la'asoti melech.
Yigdil Adonai la'asoti manu, hayinu semechim. Shuv Adonai et shivitenu, kafikim banegem. Azorim bedimad Allah chelechu v'chonosem meshech hazara. Boyavo verina nose alumotav. Yishman amarach v'tavei adolam. Baruch Eloheinu shachanu mishalav tuvah chayinu. Baruch Hashem. Amen.
Amen. Shakoach. Page 264, please rise for Mariv. Vehu rachum yachaper avelo yashchi vehu bala shiva poveler kol chamato Adonai Yoshia hamelech ya'anenu veyom korenu baruchu et Adonai hamvorach Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed Baruch Adonai hamvorach Uma'avir yomu maybe lalo mavdil ben yomu vein laila Adonai tzvaot shemo el chai v'kayam tamidim l'cholenu le'olam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai hamari v'aravim avat olam bet Yisrael chalat Ve'avatecha al tasir mimenu le'olamim Baruch atah Adonai ohev amo Yisrael Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Adonai Elohechem emet v'min hakozol kayam alenu kilon alenu. Umalchuto beratzon kiblu alehem Moshe v'nei Yisrael echanu shira b'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam michamocha balim Adonai mikamocha nadar b'kodesh norati lot osef ele malchutecha ra'u v'necha bokei hayam lifnei Moshe zeili anu v'yamru Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'ne'emar kifat Adonai et Yaakov u'galam yad chazak mimenu Baruch atah Adonai gahal Yisrael Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu shalom v'amadinu makenu farasalenu sukkot shem lechmatchinu mitzvah U'shemor tzeitenu v'oinu l'chaim u'shalom yatave ad olam Baruch atah Adonai shomer amo Yisrael la'ad Baruch Adonai l'olam amen ve'amen Baruch Adonai mitzvah shechem shalom aleluya Baruch Adonai Ki hamalchut shelecha hi u'lemelech timloch bechavod ki ein lanu melech eleh ata Baruch ata Adonai hamelech b'chvadot hamidim l'cholenu le'olam va'ed ve'al kol ma'asav yitkadav v'yikadash merabah behamad divrak yirteh v'yamlich malchuteh v'chayechonu v'yamechonu v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael b'agalav izman kariv v'imru amen yehi shmerabah varach le'olam lamei amaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitbar v'yitramah v'yinaseh v'yitadar v'yitale v'yitalosh v'yidikudisha b'rechu le'ela min kol berchata v'shirata tishbachata v'nechamata damirana be'alma v'imru amen. you've not yet finished your Amidah, please continue at your own pace. We're on page 279. יתגדל ויקדש שמי רבה, בהלמה דברה קרתי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכנו ימכנו חייך בית ישראל, בעגלה בזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן, יהי שמי רבה וברך לעולם לעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתבר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקדושה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תשבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן והינום אדוני אלוהינו עלינו מעשה ידינו כוננו עלינו מעשה ידינו כוננו שבשתנו בסר שלנו. יקראני ועיניהו עמו אנוכי וצרח הצבח בדרך ימי משביעי ורי בשועתי אורך ימי משביעיהו ורי בשועתי. Page 216. ואתה קדוש השבט תהילה תשבע וקרא זה ואמר קדוש 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 אדוני צבא מלך על הארץ כבודו. ותישאני רוח ואשמע אחרי קרש גדול ברוך אדוני ממקומו. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד הנה בחדרים ברוך מחבר ולשם ויבטחו וכידי שמך כאילו עזוב תדרשך אדוני, אדוני חפץ למען צדקו יגדיל תורה וידיר. Page 280. יתגדל ויקדש שמי רבה, בהמה דברה קרתי וימליך מלכותי, בחייכנו וימכנו חייך בית ישראל, בעגלה בזמן קריב, ואמרו אמן, יהי שמי רבה וברך לעולם לעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתבר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקדושה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תשבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. תתקבל צלדון ודהון דכל ישראל קודם אבהון דבי שמיה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלום שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום מרמיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל לתת כל הצבא שלו. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא אדוני אחד ושמו אחד. Warner's Kaddish, page 282. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה בעלמה דברה קירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון ויומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעולם לעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי לקדושה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תשבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. יהי שלמה רבה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום ברמיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. All right. הנה אל ישועתי אפתח ולא אפחד כי עוזי וזמרתיה אדוני ויהי לי לישועה ושפתם מים בששון ממי הישועה לאדוני הישועה על עמך ברכתך סלע אדוני צבאותי עמנו נשגב לנו אלוהי יעקב סלע אדוני אשרי אדם בוטח בך אדוני הושיע המלך יעננו ויום קוראנו ליהודים הייתה אורה ושמחה וששון ויקר כן תהיה לנו כוס ישועות אשא ובשם אדוני אקרא יין עיני יין עיני יין עיני יין עיני ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי הגפן ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא מיני ושמים ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא מאורי האש ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם המבדיל בין קודש לחול בין אור לחושך בין ישראל לעמים בין יום השביעי לששת ימי המעשה ברוך אתה אדוני המבדיל בין קודש לחול המבדיל בין קודש לחול חטאתנו ימחל זרענו וחסדנו ירבה ירבה כחול וככוכב זרענו וחסדנו ירבה ירבה כחול וככוכבים בלילה שבוע טוב שבוע טוב שבוע טוב שבוע טוב שבוע טוב, שבוע טוב, שבוע טוב, שבוע טוב, אליהו הנביא, אליהו התשבי, אליהו, אליהו, אליהו הגלעדי במהרה וימינו. Marshall, is that yours? יבוא אלינו עם משיח בן דוד, עם משיח בן דוד. שבוע טוב, everyone. Thanks for being here. Anything fruitful grow out of our email? She wasn't here tonight, as we